I can only speak for mathematics. This is a great thing about math. Math doesn't change, you know. X is still X no matter what you call it. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing is always going to be the same. How it's taught is, I would say, is dependent on the teacher. You can shove different standards down our throats, and you still have the uniqueness aspect of how a teacher teaches.
I would say the English department has probably had the least amount of impact by Common Core because we already had reading and writing standards.
Again, I feel like it's just good English teaching, and I feel like it's just sort of clarified that.
I'm seeing a lot more at the 10th grade level, a lot more informational text, nonfiction reading than we have previously covered, at least in the district I came from.
English, at least when done well, I think, has always focused on the ideas that emerge from a text.
So you think it's a step in the right direction?
I do, yes. But like I said before, English hasn't changed that much. Go talk to a math teacher. Like, the curriculum's totally different for math, so.
They're trying to shift the role of the expert from the teacher to the student. Now, on paper, that sounds wonderful. You might hear a lot of buzzwords like discovery learning or self-motivated learning, and it is wonderful in principle, but maybe I'm biased. But in the world of mathematics, it is not like other subjects like English or social studies.
One of the areas that I find a bit difficult is sometimes they'll take a concept which is relatively simple and make it complicated.
It's not just skill driven anymore. It's not just here's a question, now solve it. It's here's a pattern, explain the pattern.
What's supposed to happen more with Common Core is that the students, we're supposed to give them problems and have the students try to discover on their own how they're going to go about solving them, to find their own method to finding a solution.
Because it's not a discovery thing. It needs to be taught and learned. We're not, as a mass, born with great mathematical insights. That's why we have famous people like, you know, Gauss and Leibniz and Newton and Euler, whose name lives on years and years after their deaths, right? Yeah, it's a rare thing to have someone who can thoughtfully create new mathematics.
That there's some things that I don't quite understand about just the sheer amount of testing, like the number of hours that students will spend taking the tests that are meant to assess our ability to teach our students to read effectively.
Testing and the focus on testing and the number of tests that students have to take nowadays and the number of tests that teachers have to administrate. Huge controversy surrounding that, of course.
As much as I've seen of the 10th grade AZ Merit Test, it's completely informational. I didn't see any literature on there, and it's a synthesis question, which is new. That's something I wasn't typically teaching until the AP English class I was teaching was kind of a document-based question.
It adds layers of bureaucracy, issues like Common Core, which through the Obama stimulus were imposed on the states.
You know, we didn't really see standardized tests writ large until the mid-90s, and it was a slow build.
The standards themselves are fine, it's the implementation which is creating a problem.
Now, if you actually read the standards, they are less ambiguous. They're more concise and specific, which is a good thing. On the flip side,
it's not internationally benchmarked, and indeed, there's no research behind it.
but I also teach at the university level at nighttime, and I'm seeing the gap between the high school and the college level in terms of being able to synthesize data and read critically.
It was contrived by an insular group of educational testing executives with only 2 academic content specialists. Neither specialist approved the final standards, and the English consultant Dr. Sandra Stotsky publicly stated she felt the standards left students with an empty skill set.
There is no guarantee whatsoever that any of these courses will work.
Even under the new Common Core, even if they said 3 times 4 was 11, if they were able to explain their reasoning and explain how they came up with their answer really in words and an oral explanation.
For me, just a regular person, I would say the changes that have occurred has hindered teaching and learning.